Today I have a couple leftovers to clean up, I think. It struck me when I was finishing up last time, and I had to stop very promptly sooner than I wanted to, that I was into working with a partner to accomplish certain aims, goals, tasks that needed to be worked out in any marriage. And I was giving examples of how that was particularly important when step families are being created. And I realized there was one other topic I hadn't talked about. There may have been more, but one came to mind. And that is one of the beautiful possibilities of having a close partnership with somebody else is that there can be trade-offs. You can swap unpleasant people from the lives of one of you to the other person. And I can give examples of that easily enough. The most obvious one took place in my own life, again, when we were fixing a step family together. Both of our respective spouses were people that we had long relationship histories with. And as the divorce took place, and even in the aftermath of the final dissolution agreements, each of our respective former spouses was being very difficult, each in different ways. My former wife was very, very angry for some reason, even though she had somebody else, another man, move in. 6 weeks after I left home, she was living with somebody else. She was still furious with me for having abandoned her. It was as if I was supposed to be the good father who was there all the time. And she had a boyfriend that now is apparent to me, and she was going to be with her boyfriend, but I shouldn't have left her. I should have been devoted to her and not started off with some other woman and started getting involved in the creation of another family. It was like I was betraying her. So she was angry with me all the time. And on the anniversary of around the time I left her in early June each year, she would haul me back into court because then I had to be present and then I had to be responsive to her. And then she had a chance to tell the court what a terrible person I was yet again about something else. And she would try and change the agreement that we had in place. She never won. As a matter of fact, it often cost her a lot of money in legal fees, but she persisted in doing that. In addition, everything was a problem. She was constantly wanting to change the dates of when I would visit with my children, and she wanted to control what went on in the house I was now living in. She would give me menus of things I was supposed to serve the kids. She inquired of them where they were sleeping, and we had a tiny house back then. So one of them was sleeping on the couch, and the other was sleeping on a sleeping bag on an air mattress on the floor. And she would call me up and scream at me that I needed to get some other premises, and those weren't the right way to be raising children when they were with me. I wasn't dressing them properly. I wasn't feeding them properly. I wasn't giving them a proper space in the house. It was always something, some issue that she would yell at me about. And I would find myself getting into arguing matches with her on the telephone. And one day, my present wife to be, were we married already? We may have been married already by that time, said, "Why don't you stop talking to her?" And I said, "Stop talking to her?" She said, "Yes, you have a settlement agreement between the two of you. It says when visits are to take place and how much money you're obligated to ship over to that house. The only thing you have to do is just keep doing that because that's an agreement that's now an order of the court. And you can tell her you're not going to discuss it. You can say those magic words, stop talking to her. You don't have to talk to her about anything else." And I said, "All right, I'll try that." And so then she would harass me. I would say, I'm not going to discuss this with you." And I would get a whole bunch of angry voicemails and on, and about there were things I had to pay attention to, and we were still raising the same children, and therefore she had to interact with me, and I could not talk to her. If she had to talk to me, she had a right to talk to me, went on and on. So we went to the next step. My wife, Hermine, said to me, how about this? Write her a letter and say that it's been 3 years since the separation now, and each of you continues to be in distress if you try and discuss anything with each other. So you really are hanging it up. You will not be available to her in any way. If she has problems with the children's apparel or their diet or a visitation time needs to be changed, just appoint me. I will be your representative and I will talk to her. And that seemed brilliant to me. You're willing to put up with whatever she does? She said, yes, let me intervene and get her off your back and away from you. I'll take her on. Well, that's what happened. I informed her of that, and immediately she blew up, and then she started testing me, leaving messages for me, threatening me, "I'll take you to court, and I'll force you to talk to me." And I just didn't respond. I didn't respond at all. And one day we had to change a visit, and Hermine called her and left a message for her that a visit needed to be changed, and she got cursed at and vilified, but she said, you can be angry with me, but I've been appointed to take care of this, and I'm the one you're going to have to deal with. If you don't like that, Arthur told me to tell you, you can give messages to your attorney about what you want from me, and your attorney can talk to my attorney about what you want, and then we'll decide what to do. But that's going to cost a lot of money if you keep using the attorneys as from passing messages back and forth. So it began to end. And after the 5th year of being separated, I actually never again exchanged a word with my former wife until she died when she was 72 years old. And it felt like such a liberation and a relief. And it also is an image of what I expect of divorce. I don't expect divorce to just be an end of certain legal matters, but then the two parties carry on their terrible relationship over and over and over again in some other forum, arguing about money or arguing about visitation or fixing blame for what happened. And the awfulness of the bad relationship continues. A real divorce is people come to rest and are quiet and done. And very few people who get divorced actually finish getting divorced. They're stuck in the process somewhere and they carry on the ugliness year after year. So I picked up her former husband. The problem we were having with him is he had a child support responsibility. He was supposed to pay, I forgot what, dollars a month, every month in child support. And there would be no check. So she would start chasing him, leaving messages for him, trying to get in touch with him. And maybe 2 months late, a check would come, and they were always erratic. And at one point, we took him to court. He was, by at that point, 4 months in arrear, and we had a record of how erratic he had been in the months before that. And we took him to court on a contempt charge that he was not living up to his child support obligations. And the judge was very stern with him. He gave him 3 days to come up with all the arrears monies, or he was going to report into jail the following weekend. He would go to jail for screwing with his responsibility. He quickly borrowed the money from his father, and he made us whole so he didn't have to go to jail. But the following month, he was late again, and my poor wife was getting all aggravated. So I said, rest, this is silly. I don't even know if the money we're getting from it is worth this much aggravation in your life over and over again. You're full of anger, frustration. You feel apologetic that I have to be on the butt end of this somehow, that we have to pay the bills without knowing whether we're going to get money or when we're going to get money from him. Please, I have a solution. So I told her what the solution was. I was going to write him a good letter, and I was going to say to him, it was obvious he was having trouble meeting his obligations to pay child support. And we were going to excuse him. We were not going to excuse him from the responsibility. We were going to excuse him for making payments at the present time. he ever wanted to make payments, that's fine. We would credit him with the payments. But I did the arithmetic. When your oldest daughter turns 18 and you're free of this responsibility, the total amount you will have paid us over all those years is X. And your younger daughter is younger, so that amount is Y. It's a little bit more. And I will tell you what, I would just like it because that will help with college. If on the 18th birthday of each one, you simply give us what's owed us as of that date, as if you had paid all the child support. And that will help us with set up a college fund. And we will not bother you with missed, late, or less than adequate payments over the whole interval of years from now until then. Uh, and he said, fine. And I thought, well, he's going to be a con artist and we'll never see the money again. But at least we just have to go to court one time instead of dragging him to court over and over again with contempt actions. We'll do it one time right after the 18th birthday of each of the children. Much to my surprise, he actually paid us. We got checks of several $1,000s on each of the kids' 13th, 18th birthday, and that did go into the fund. So that was a real help to my wife. She could rest and forget about it, not have to be tormented by him anymore. She took on my sister in many ways. I took on her angry, ugly, disgusting father, and I was the point of contact between the families and those particular people. And the wonderful facility that that provides people is here's what usually happens in the family. So and so is really a disruptive person. It could be a mother, a father, a brother, a friend of the family, but there are family events and so is there and so does terrible, hateful, unpleasant, or obnoxious things. And the typical thing is one of the members of the partnership tells the one who comes from that clan, would you go take care of that? Uncle so and so is really awful. I can't stand being there. Would you talk to Uncle so and so? They send the member of the clan to try and resolve the problem. And that's the wrong person to send because the member of the clan is used to participating in whatever have been the rituals of the clan. And the member of the clan is frightened, will always be frightened to be a change agent, to stir things up, to not put up with something anymore, to have a serious conversation, which might turn unpleasant, about something that needs to be changed or rectified in order for the life of the clan to go on with the new member who's now come, the partner of the person who's making the case. And that's too much to ask. The outsider who's uncomfortable and sees what's going on is much more likely to see clearly what the issue is and even to have some creative ideas about what to do about it. And that's the person who should go try and take care of the problem. The person who's the member of the clan will have a hard time carrying that out. They'll find all kinds of excuses. Oh, I can't talk about that to my mother. She's getting older and it's going to upset her if I bring that up. And there are reasons why to keep the status quo. And the outside new member of the partnership is much freer and has no guilt at all in the same way because there's no history about trying to make something that's non-functional work better. So that's what I want to say about swapping people. And I'll insert one other thing. Let this just dangle because it may belong to an earlier chapter. I simply forgot whether I included it in an earlier chapter, but if not, at least it's here. And these chapters are slowly now starting to be transcribed. So the words will appear in the transcription and I'll put them in the right place if they don't, because they certainly don't belong here. It's one of the benefits of being in a partnership with another human being. And it's also a kind of requirement. Uh, this is something that anyone who's considering getting more intimate with another human being, getting more involved, and maybe embracing them to make a life with, has to consider as one of the things to evaluate is what are the wounds that this person is bringing me? What disappointments are they bringing me? What wounds are they carrying forward from the trauma of their earlier life or the disappointments of their earlier life? Do I have compassion for that? Do I not resent them because they're that way, but simply feel moved that they would have to struggle in that fashion, even if I might not like the struggle? And so I will not only not rule them out as a possible companion, I will embrace the challenge of seeing if I can provide some kinds of experiences that would be healing to them in the kind of trouble that they're having. So there's a mutual caretaking that needs to go on, a mutual willingness to embrace the flaws of the other and work with them and not criticize them and berate the other carrying wounds forward. All right. Now I will move on. Next chapter. What chapter are we up to? Aaron's looking it up.
This will be chapter.
Today I'm going to talk about
chapter 9.
Okay, I'm on to chapter 9. This one is about the importance of merging finances and making a unified financial stand in the world. And I think I will start with one of my wife's cases that in my consultation group this past week, yesterday, I was talking a lot about. It's a new case of hers referred by one of the other members of my consultation group. It is a couple who's been married for several years now, I think about 8 or 9 years. It's a second marriage for each of them. He is now 77 and she is in her middle 50s. I forget how much. There is probably a 20-year age difference between the two of them. And I will not say that this is necessarily a function of the age difference, but the age difference plays into what the problem is. As I've come to understand this marriage, listening to what my poor wife is struggling with, this is not a marriage. They may have a legal document that says that they are husband and wife, but this is really an adoption. This is a woman who's in her 50s, but feels like a case of arrested development to me. She feels like much of her behavior is characteristic of a 14-year-old girl, not of a middle-aged woman. And this man is struggling with disappointments about how she fails to be the wife that he would yearn for her to be. But that's like having a Pekingese and hoping your Pekingese will act like a Great Dane. She is not ready to be anybody's wife. She's really his teenage child that he's trying to raise. And he's got the wrong playbook. He's got the playbook of what he would want from a wife, but he needs the playbook of how he can be a kind parent to a teenage girl. And this plays out markedly as it does with teenage girls about money. He is quite wealthy. I envy him. He is very opulent. And she gave up her career. She had been a kitchen designer before she got involved with him, but she had no need to work. She had children of her own from a previous relationship. So she asked if it was okay to stay home and give up her career so she could really be a stay-at-home mom to their kids. I think the oldest one was, no, he was about 12 and the youngest one was about 7. There are 3 children uh, that she stayed home with. Now, with regards to money, and money is power in our culture. Anything we do has to get paid for. Any place we live in has to get paid for. Any trip we take has to get paid for. Any doctor's appointment, some of it has to be paid for. Anything we do requires the outpouring of dollars from some account. And if couples are to live in any kind of harmony, what I've discovered is the best solution for them is to arrive at a budget. And I will be talking about that soon. This family, with the couple I've been trying to describe, has no budget whatsoever. She is exactly like a teenage girl. She has been delegated spending money for the running of the household. There's a maid that comes, so she gives the maid cash, and she needs cash to give to the maid. She goes to the market and spends money in the market and brings home the groceries. She takes clothes to the cleaners. She gives money for school lunches to the kids. She is dispensing money one way, another, over and over again. And the way she gets the money, she walks up to husband and said, I need money for the kids' lunches this week. Would you give me X number of dollars? Or the maid's coming on Thursday. Could you give me X number of dollars for the maid? She's like a teenage kid saying, I want to go to the movies with my friend on Saturday. Please give me $20 for the admission and for the popcorn. Everything is a transaction that has to be made, and everything is to be asked for to him at the time that the need is felt by the woman or that she remembers that has to be taken care of. One of the tensions between the two of them is that she is pissed off at him that she has to go ask. He should know what she needs, and he should just give it to her without asking. And that's a source of tension between the two of them. He tells her he's managing four complex properties and taking care of their investment portfolio, has many things on his mind all day. He can't remember the minutia of things that she's spending money on. And they put no system in place that would solve this. The simplest and most worthwhile solution, as far as I'm concerned, is that the two of them sit down. She goes over with him once what the known weekly expenses are. They open a household account, and at the first of every month, he puts enough money in that account so that she can cover all those expenses, plus maybe 20% extra for unlooked for expenses. And she has a debit card that she can go to the ATM if she needs cash, or she can charge on it if she's somewhere where she can charge. And she doesn't have to talk to him about money anymore for running the household, and he doesn't have to be aggravated by her treating him like a bad person. Actually, what she's doing is treating him like a parent and irritated with him the same way a 14-year-old gets irritated with a parent. So I'm suggesting a way they can start moving into the alignment of partnership rather than parent and child. A second problem they have about money, which is now being addressed by my wife, is he sprung a prenup agreement on her 2 weeks before the marriage. He had been very badly burned by his first wife, who got the best and most vicious divorce lawyer she possibly could. And she took away half of his net worth when he went through his first divorce. And that was millions of dollars. And he has rebuilt his holdings. He's back above where he was when he went through that divorce, but that really hurt and made him furious. He spent hundreds of $1,000s on lawyers as part of this fight too. And he has a nightmare scenario going that his new wife, she's not so new, it's been almost 10 years already. His new wife is going to do the same thing to him, that she seems restless. He's not certain that she's really devoted to him. He's now 77. He's worried he's going to get older and burdensome, and she's not going to want to take care of him. And so she'll leave him then. And he's afraid history is going to repeat itself. He was afraid already when he married her. So he has a prenup that gives her practically nothing if they get a divorce. And she's very, very resentful of that. And she cries. I'm afraid I'm not going to have him. And the language is, I'm afraid I'm not going to have him to take care of me ahead. He's going to get tired of me and he's going to leave me and I'm going to have nothing. I'm going to be on the street with my children because their biological father doesn't pay any child support. It's another thing he's doing. He is the earth father. He's paying for her children as well as paying for her, his fourth child. Oh, and he has his own grown children that he gives lots of money to too. So he is Earth Father, and he's cast very well in the role of being the good parent for her. If only he would act like a good parent and not a withholding parent and an insensitive parent. Uh, so one of the big things that my wife and I will brainstorm about, and I'm meddling in her casework here, is how to get the two of them to create a budget. And he made a really powerful and wonderful step forward. He was crying in the session and telling her he does not want to leave her. As a matter of fact, he's frightened all the time that she's lost interest in him. She acts cold and detached, and she keeps many secrets. She won't give him access to her cell phone or to her email addresses. She wants to keep privacy. And sometimes she goes off with her friends to various events and she tells him he's not invited. And just like a teenager, I'm going to go off and play with my playmates and you're not supposed to be there. Don't leave me alone. I don't want you there. And she even said, whispered to my wife, don't have any fun when he's there, so I don't invite him to most things I like going to. That's exactly what 14-year-old kids do. They are not jointly, just as they're not jointly partnered in the financial running of their lives, they are not jointly partnered either in their social life. She has a social life with her friends. He has business colleagues that they entertain because it's good for his business, but they seem to have no couples or other families that they enjoy social connection with. It's all strange in that coupledom. So there's a lot of work to be done there, but one of the outstanding pieces of work is to create a joint budget. And there's so many people who don't do that. I know lots of couples who are married, but they're still arguing about I went to the market last week and I spent $210 when you went the week before. It was your turn. You only spent 105. You should give me the difference. And each of them has separate accounts and they're doing bookkeeping and trying to find out who's spending more on what than the other. And they're in some kind of thing to make it level between them so that each one is spending only the same amount of money. And so they keep records of who owes who how much or whose turn it is to pay for dinner if they go out to dinner. That I consider that absolutely crazy. But it's a way of feeling that I've not fully surrendered. I'm still in charge of my own life. I still have my mad money, and if things get tough, I have my income stream, and it goes in my account, and I'm not going to make myself that vulnerable to my partner. Even after years and years, they're still doing this nonsense, as if melding finances was the final surrender. And it was an even more powerful surrender than surrendering and having an orgasm while the other is touching you. Melding money is even a more powerful and vulnerable surrender to make. Well, I think it's really important if it's to be a viable and a healthy relationship that the money be melded and that there be a single account. Uh, Now, the way to create it is somebody has to pay attention. I would hope one of them has some experience in bookkeeping and tracking where money is going. It's easy to start. What the hell are our fixed expenses? And I can rattle off some of them. What are we paying for housing each month? What are we paying for utilities? What are we paying for food roughly each month? You go down a list of things that have to be done. What are our insurance premiums that we have to pay each year or quarterly or whenever we pay them? There are a lot of fixed expenses. What are cell phones costing? Uh, I don't even want to bother rattling them all off. There are about 30 or 40 things that utilities, gas, electric, water, what are we paying for those? Household supplies, on and on and on and on. Maintenance and repairs, on and on. Car repairs, car gasoline, car servicing. You just rattle off and you take a look at all your fixed expenses. You're in trouble if that money exceeds what both income streams that you each have. If you're a two worker family, you better start doing something differently. but hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully there's some discretionary money left over. Then you can start apportioning that. How much are we going to spend on entertainment? What kind of entertainment are we going to have? Are we going to take vacations? How often are we going to take vacations? What's the budget we should allocate for the kind of vacation that would nourish each of us? Should we take short trips frequently during the year? Should we take one long and glorious trip? About how much are the airplane tickets going to take? Do we need to stay at a five-star hotel? What are we going to spend on vacations? And then are we putting anything away for retirement? How much should that be? And on and on. And you have to have maybe a lot of arguments. You don't know how important it is to me to go home and visit my parents who live in Springfield, Illinois. I need to do that at least with us, and that's really important to me. All right. But on the other hand, that means we can only take a few weekend trips during the year with the kids to have quick vacations because that's where all the money is going for most of the vacation allocation we want to make. You have a lot of arguing you have to do and negotiation you have to do, but finally you tie the budget down and it's in place. I would also urge that built into the budget is a discretionary fund. In my life, it's about $100. I can spend $100 that's in a pot waiting for me on anything I please. I don't need to share it with my wife. I don't need to talk to her about it. It's there for me to just be frivolous with on my own. She has $100 too, and I don't meddle in that. If any of us though is trying to break the budget or wants to reorder it in some way, we need to talk to each other. That discretionary pot is there. Maybe one of us says that's not enough money. I've acquired a taste for Stradivarius violins, and I want to start collecting them. I need a bigger discretionary pot than that to acquire my violins. Then you have to have arguments. But it's nice to have the discretionary money because it gives a sense that in some ways I can just freely be whimsical, even if my partner is annoyed with the idiocy. I'm a comic book collector. I like getting one or two rare comic books periodically, and that means nothing to her. She thinks it's ridiculous, but it's been budgeted for, and I can do that with my discretionary money. That oils the interfaces between the two people and allows them to be more comfortable and more gracious with each other. In my family, I usually spend the money. I usually use my allocation to make a nicer vacation for us than we budgeted. I pour it back into some shared experience. And she loves giving gifts to the grandchildren. So that's where her discretionary money tends to go. I keep telling her they have plenty, but if it gives you pleasure to do that, go ahead. So that's what I believe about creating a unified budget and the work that needs to go into it. Once it's in place, it really ends arguments. The only time that it's time to argue again is if there's a serious change in money coming in. If suddenly somebody gets a wonderful raise or you win the jackpot on a slot machine, or if you win a lotto ticket, suddenly there's money pouring in. Yes, that's the time to revisit the budget, to restructure it, to acquire new things, maybe a better place to live, to reorder the indulgences that you're spending money on, have more lavish entertainment, start throwing parties for 100 people at a time, hiring all to do that if that will give you pleasure. You have to revisit the budget then, or if somebody loses an income stream, of course, now you have to do belt tightening. How are you going to tail back the budget so you can still take care of the basic things that are needed and give up more discretionary things that you'll learn to live without? Other than that, budgets should stay in place for years at a time without having to be amended. We're in a time of rapid inflation, though, so I think that's going to make many of us start revisiting what our budgets are like and having to make adjustments in them. Maybe I need to work some more hours. Maybe my wife needs to make some more hours. we'll figure out what to do about the growing cost of everything we were engaged in. A final comment over in the financial arena for this chapter is, and I can use those two clients again. I am not a big fan uh, uh, of uh, of agreements, prenuptial agreements. Uh, what the hell kind of way is that to start an enterprise? Is to agree upon what we're going to do with each other when we divorce each other. That's like issuing a curse on the marriage. I think my ordinary budgeting process is probably worthwhile, or uh, yeah, I don't think I want any kind of prenup. I think prenups are just an invitation to get a divorce. I would rather the couple be frightened about entering into the divorce process and seriously consider what they could do that might repair what's missing or what's bad for them. So I don't mind postnups. If you have a prenup and you discover it's binding, it's fine with me if you make a that's more loving and reasonable. Oh, I have a story from my own caseload to tell about that. I saw a couple about 20 years ago. She was 60 and he was 70. There was 10 years difference between the two of them. She had signed a prenup when she was 30 and he was 40. And he was already in possession of a nice inheritance from his parents. And everybody told him he needed to have a prenup. He needed to protect himself in case the marriage went south. So he had a prenup that gave her $50,000. The prenup was put into the family trust that he created. She had a prenup that would give her $50,000 in case of his death. And that was the only recognition she was getting. And she had been married to him now for decades. And she was getting older and he was getting older. And in his will, which he shared with her, the balance of his estate was to be divided up equally between his children. It didn't even honor her. He figured that the $50,000 that was in the prenup would be adequate to give her, and he loved his children, and her children would take care of her in her old age, and he didn't have to worry about that. They had done pretty well, so that seemed okay to him. And she was so hurt and so offended. They had had, as far as she was concerned, a lovely ongoing marriage. It had lasted for decades. She was worried about the remaining years of her life. She was worried about his health. She could not understand why he was choosing as his first beneficiaries to make sure his children got lavishly taken care of when they were doing pretty well financially already. And he wasn't willing to make her more important and to give her a larger portion of his estate because she might live on and not be able to work very well. Why was he wanting to burden her children with that? Was he not grateful at all, or did her years of kindness and love and service to him not mean that much to him? And he agreed to come for counseling. And I talked to him about his prenup and said, uh, do you would your feelings be hurt if this were reversed? Suppose you were a very wealthy woman and said worth millions and said to you, well, you're okay. We signed a prenup when I was frightened you might exploit me if we got a divorce, and I agreed to give you $50,000, but you don't really need any more than that. I know your kids will take care of you, and my kids are very precious to me, so I want to give the balance of my money, most of my money, to my children. How would that feel? And he thought for a second. He stood in her place and said, I would not feel very cherished. And I said, well, that's exactly how your wife is feeling. He said, but I promised this money to my kids. I said, promises can be revoked. You could actually apologize to your children. You could model for them what it means to be a caring partner in a marriage relationship. And you said you made a mistake by not honoring their stepmother more. do they have a reasonable relationship with her? Yeah, they don't hate her. They like spending time with her. Well, too bad for them if they're such sulky, spoiled brats that they have to have 90% of your estate and she gets a little bit in memoriam for having been your partner for many decades. To tell them you're going to start rectifying that. Uh, and I said, if you don't trust her, if you still have lingering thoughts that she's in this for the money, and as soon as you give her a bigger chunk of what she's going to get in a post-nup, she's going to just throw you away. She's been hiding how restless and hateful she is, and just so she could get her claws in your funds. If you really believe that's true, here's a way you can put her to the test. Let's see, you're 70. How about we stretch something out? How about you write a post-nup, and in the post-nup, at the end of the trail, she will be a 50% holder of all your assets, much as she would have been if she had been your original wife and everything was community property from day one. She will arrive at a destination when you're 80 and she's 70, where she's now a 50% holder of all your holdings and all your cash and net worth. And the other 50% be distributed to your children. As a pack, you will honor them in the same way you're honoring their stepmother, and you can give her a 1/10 boost every year. Starting this year, you'll give her 1/10 more of the net worth, 1/10 of the 50% of your net worth. You'll write it over to her. So 10 years from now, she will have had the full 50% in her possession. And you can deduct from what the total amount is, the $50,000 that's already accounted for. So I have no idea what your holdings will be 10 years from now. She's going to get 1/10 of 50% of what they are every year from now until then. Would you be willing to do that? And he said, let me talk to my lawyer and I'll think on it. He came back the next week and said, yes, I'll do that. And he gave her a big hug and kiss, and I never saw them again. So that's a good example of my correcting what I thought was a hateful prenup, and putting the emphasis of to whom one should be loyal in second place. I think the spouse, unless the marriage is terrible and should come apart, the spouse should always be in second place, not after the children. That makes for very spoiled children. All right. Is there anything else I want to talk about today? No, this is a shorter chapter, so I think I will end and I will throw this open to talk about anything at this moment. Anybody want to go first?
I've noticed maybe a cohort effect in that the younger my clients are, the less apt they are to ever want to combine their finances.
Yes, I know. They want to hold on to their autonomy. They don't want to surrender fully. They don't want to have to be responsible for anybody else. We are creating a culture of the separate ones more and more.
Yeah. Maybe it's also just
marriage is going to be the only old people ever did that. Why do people ever get married? That's what Huxley wrote about, Brave New World, and we're well on the way to realizing his torpid dreams.
for better, for worse, for mostly for worse. Yeah.
I keep pleading with people. Marriage is not because it's a gloriously wonderful experience of bliss. It's a wonderful learning experience, and it's full of pain and complications and difficulties. But there's a learning that takes place that cannot be had unless you have at least one very, very close and very, very important relationship.
Sometimes people learn they need a prenup, it sounds like.
Yep.
What's your sense of prenups, Arthur?
I don't like them. I think they're an invitation to get a divorce and not do the work. This person is too complicated. I don't believe I can work anything out with her. I made a mistake in marrying her or him, so I'll just get rid of them. I blew my nose in that Kleenex, and now I'm ready to throw it away.
Hmm.
I arranged that it wouldn't cost me a lot of money when I got into this. I was so smart. I'd much rather have the other imagery. If you get married, you are now two people living on a desert island, and you're not going to survive unless you get along with each other somehow.
And help each other.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But I'm an old guy. I'm old fashioned, and I'm becoming passé. Hmm. Now I think there's another chapter I should have. Or would that be too bleak to end the book on marriage with a chapter on managing a divorce?
Yeah, seems reasonable. Given the stats at the moment are greater than 50% likely, I think rather than maybe prenuptials, there should be a very concrete and detailed description of what people are actually signing up for, a pre-educational
Oh, that would be
idea.
wonderful.
Yeah.
A set of agreements about who's going to do what to whom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what it all entails and what the legal
Yeah.
contract they're signing really is.
Yeah.
Because it is such a thing.
Didn't there used to be a course in making marriage work, something like that, where
Yeah.
you know that
Yeah.
people who are about to get married would kind of go through a kind of like a course or a training.
Yes. I would be very much in favor. I would even suggest that in order to get a marriage license, that you needed to complete such a course and with a passing grade and bring a certificate to get the marriage license.
Yeah.
Same thing for becoming pregnant. You take a course in parenting.
Or driving a car.
Yeah, we have to do it for driving a car. Why not do it for probably two of the most important things that anybody can do in a lifetime? There's no training offered and no testing of capabilities.
We've just created a calling for you, Arthur.
What's the calling?
Well, I mean, creating these kind of like courses or these requirements.
Arthur Kovacs's Prenuptial Educational Institute.
Well, if this book will be turned into a written book, it's being transcribed. I will polish it, edit it, pull it together so it's not so hit and miss, and it flows in some reasonable way. And maybe I'll get a publisher. And if I do, I have a feeling many people might contact me for exactly that purpose. I'm thinking about getting married. What should I know? Or what else could you tell me that isn't in your book?
It becomes the marriage handbook or
Yeah.
rules of the road.
Yeah. All I have to do is live for another 90 years, and I can bring some of this into existence. No, you guys are going to have to go on without me. That's what's going to happen. Anything else at the moment? Okay, I will sign out, and I will see you again next week. Wait, what was the topic? Oh, the decision to have a child will be the topic next week. I think I have finished everything necessary to try and construct a marital relationship wisely and to manage it well. And then I'll get into the decision to have a child, because that's the thing that blows up the entire structure as soon as you go down that road. Everything you've worked to put together is now crashed into disaster. Talk to you next week.
Have a good weekend.
You too. Bye.
All right. Bye.